So today is August 16th. We're at the Bountiful House. I'm Ben. Gonna ask a few questions. Alright, so starting in childhood, I like this one from the Powells. Did you ever get in trouble at home, and what was that for?
Get in trouble.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go
Well,
first?
I can't think of a specific time, except I know quite often if my sister and I would be arguing or fighting over something, Mother would often, well, occasionally she would really scold us, but quite often she would just start singing, "There is beauty all around," or "Let us all speak kind words to each other."
Well, yeah, we got in trouble a lot. My recollection as a young child, most of the trouble involved candy. When we find Mom and Dad's stash, usually around Christmas time, and sneak a few of them. And we had one place where two doors went into two different rooms. In some way they would come together here, and we could hide in between there. I remember, I'm sure it was with David and Dick, and we'd gotten into something, and Mom finally found us. "There you little varmints are." I don't remember whether it was varmints, but they're, chewing away on all that no good stuff. And one time we were down, we had eaten about half their little bags of things, and says, well, mostly it was scolding and going to bed and so forth. But this one time she says, "Okay, your penalty is you have to eat the rest of it right now while I'm watching
Whole
it."
bag.
And that was the worst of all.
Up on that.
Yeah.
Those are good ones. Any others?
Well, I think I tend to forget the bad things I did. And I'm sure I did plenty of them.
It's probably easier for Dad to get in trouble with all the boys. You just had a sister.
Yeah, we used to get in trouble with our neighbors by throwing balls at their windows, and Mrs. Charlesworth and Mrs. Stunkey and so forth. But I don't know, it was probably pretty typical growing up years.
Alright, so another one from the Powells about your schooling. What was your favorite subject at school?
Well, let's see, that varied, I guess, with my age, elementary or high school. I'd have to say, in high school, my favorite subject was ceramics. I enjoyed that class the most, but I didn't usually like my history classes until my senior year in high school. I had a really good history teacher, and he really made things come alive, and I really enjoyed that. My worst class in high school was chemistry. We had a very strict old maid teacher that just thought the world revolved around chemistry, and it was a hard class, the way she taught it anyway.
I always enjoyed music. I enjoyed band and orchestra. But probably as far as a single class, the two that I would say were my favorites were world history from Miss Newber. She was such a good teacher and just made it come alive. And then trigonometry from Miss Fanny Hodges. She just had a way of figuring out, showing that it wasn't just a bunch of numbers, that there were some meanings to it. So I would say those were probably two of my, quote, favorite classes, besides music.
I'll do the follow-up and say least favorite. Ask about that.
My least favorite, I think social studies was probably my least favorite, because I could never figure out what they were trying to teach us. I didn't have any classes that I hated necessarily, but I do kind of remember what's the purpose of all this psychology, and that was kind of in that area.
I already told chemistry was
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Did you play any sports growing
I played a lot in sports, but mostly on our ward teams. I did play a little bit in high school, but I didn't really like it. But the main reason I didn't was because you had to have it. You either chose you were in the marching band, or you were on a sports team. You couldn't do both. And I just really enjoyed the band part. So it wasn't because I didn't like sports, but it's because you couldn't. And so,
that better.
yeah. But on the ward team, we loved basketball. In fact, it's hard to admit, but it's probably true that one of the reasons I went to Mutual was because you had to go to Mutual to play basketball. I mean, it wasn't that I disliked Mutual, but there were other things I maybe would have done, but that was the rule. If you didn't go to Mutual, you didn't get to play basketball, and so we really enjoyed it. We always liked to play the other teams in our building because it had a low ceiling, and we were used to it, and we knew how to handle it, and the other teams didn't. So it gave us an advantage.
I enjoyed swimming. Wasn't on any sports teams. That wasn't a really big deal when I was growing up, at least to all the teams that they have now, at young ages and all. I enjoyed watching a lot of sports. My dad was Mr. Sports fan, especially BYU teams, and he was often, could be known to have, of course this was before television, but he would have the radio on in one room listening to a ball game, and maybe another room, he had a little tiny radio, he'd be listening to a different game and keep them both going at the same time. He was a great sports fan, and so watching the Major League Baseball games or listening to them, it was mostly on the radio, and occasionally we would have enough money, we would go see the Dodgers play or something like that, and that was fun because Daddy liked it so much that it kind of was contagious.
It's fun to go with me. That's cool. Did you ever continue any sports in the adult life, or what did you like to do athletically?
I think the only thing that I kind of did in high school that I continued on with was tennis. We used to play tennis an awful lot. I even remember when we realized we were going to have to move here to the Salt Lake area. That was one of the considerations, not a very big one, but was there enough room to put a tennis court in, or is there a tennis court close by? Because that was something that we really enjoyed a lot, and we played quite a bit. Not only Jean and I, but the kids. Nancy. And it sounds like it's a big deal. It's not as big a deal as it sounds, because tennis wasn't really an organized sport in high school then. But she did become the women's, in her senior year, I think it was her senior year, became the women's, Idaho State women's single tennis champion. Which doesn't mean a whole lot because they weren't like competition from all over, but it was in the area. And I remember in the final game when she beat this girl from Pocatello or Boise or someplace. I remember the girl, when she lost and Nancy won, she threw her racket down and says, "Well, so much for BYU tennis summer school."
Summer camp.
Summer camp or something like that. But yeah, a lot of our kids play tennis.
Is that why you, remember the place you had in Jackson that had the
Yeah.
tennis courts?
Yeah.
Is that kind of
Tennis
why you
club,
did that?
yeah, that was,
That was fun.
Yeah.
that was part of it. We were, just never really worked out, but
Yeah.
that was kind of one of our goals.
It was, yeah,
I also kind of liked ice skating at one point. I bought my own ice skates even the year I was a school teacher. And one of my roommates, Gail Cutler, and I signed up for ice skating lessons the summer after our first year of teaching. And then when John came home from his mission and convinced me to follow him to Idaho, get married. One of the hard things was I had already paid for all these ice skating classes. And so we missed out on the rest of my ice skating, so I have never done much with it.
yeah. Is that why you
But I
had
did
us
take a
all
few
take
lessons.
ice skating lessons when we were kids?
I thought you would enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, no, because we all did. It was fun. Yeah.
And yeah, my mom played tennis for a long time. I used to go with her and she beat me, so.
Yeah. She's good.
She's good.
She's good, yeah. Alright, my last question is, what personality traits do you admire most and why? Just in general, in people, what's something
anyone?
that you really admire when you see someone
Well,
who has
I
that trait?
think that you always look at people that you admire and think that that's something you'd like. I always admired my dad. I always thought that he was a good businessman, but he was a good people person, and he was a good husband and father, and you know, he was busy. He was involved in the Kiwanis Club, and he was involved in the Chamber of Commerce, and he was involved in all those kinds of things. He ran for mayor a couple of times, and was on almost every board there was. But despite all of that, I just had the feeling that he really cared for people, and that was just a really good quality. Talking about growing up, I'm not talking about church leaders and things like that, but so I think that quality of being helpful to people, but being motivated enough to be successful, and I would say that he was probably as good an example as anyone.
I think when you say qualities, I think when you feel someone is really honest with you and honest with the Lord and themselves, that's a very admirable quality and one that you would want to follow. Friendly and kind.
Well, and when you talk about that, that was another thing with Dad. He was always loyal to the leaders. He was the bishop of our ward during the war, and I remember of how sad he would be when he'd have to go tell people that their son had been killed in action or wounded, and once in a while he would take me with him, not very often, but I just felt like, you know, he was just totally loyal to the leaders of the church, and we talked a lot about his mission and about his missionary experiences and about his father's mission and his missionary experiences and about his father's close friendship with President McKay and their experiences. And looking back, I can kind of tell that it wasn't that he was trying to overly influence it. It's just something that he really felt, you know, and just wanted to let us know.
And he was a true diplomat, I think, too, when I
Yeah.
think about your dad. Just gentle.
Yeah, and really a lot of the businesses in Idaho Falls that have been successful over the years, he was right in the beginning, like the KID Broadcasting and Land Title Company and the Bank of Commerce and several that and he wasn't selfish, he wanted to get other people involved, and anyway, those qualities of being helpful and being loyal.
All right, you done?
Is that good?
Yeah, thank you very much.